All right, so we're doing the unit CHCLEG001, working legally and ethically in this industry, in the care industry. And when we're in the class, I have a little icebreaker with this unit that I call 2 truths and 1 lie. We can try it because, you know, we're a new class just to get to know each other a little bit. So on the 2 truths and 1 lie, I want you all to think about 2 truths and about yourself and 1 lie. And then we'll just share it just briefly. You can unmute yourself and share it. I'll start off with sharing mine. And then you need to guess, we need to guess from each other which one is the lie out of the 3 little scenarios that we present to each other. So the first one in my life is I'm going to say to you that I've never gotten a speeding ticket. The second one is that I have parachuted. And the third one is that I have met Angelina Jolie. So I'll put that over to you guys. Which one do you think of my little scenarios is the truth and which one is a lie?
Probably last one is a lie.
Last one is a lie. Very good. Who else?
Yeah, maybe the last one is the lie.
Okay. I've never gotten a speeding ticket. I have parachuted and I have met Angelina Jolie.
First scenario is a lie.
For you? Yeah.
What do
The
you
second,
say? Second one.
the second one and third one for me is a lie.
The second and the third one. I've only had 1 lie.
So I'll since they already picked third most of the time, I'll choose the second one is a lie.
The second one's a lie.
Yeah.
Very good.
Because
All right, I'll keep you. I help you out of suspense. The last one is the lie. Okay, I've never gotten a speeding ticket. I think that's just a miracle. I've got tickets for other things, but not for speeding. I have parachuted. I wasn't a good experience. I had 2 tickets after I did my course in 1989. After I've done this weekend crash course to go parachuting, and I had 2 tickets, and I walked with the second ticket in my pocket for another 10 years after. I never did the second jump. 1 jump was enough for me. But Angelina Jolie came to my country of origin, which is Namibia, and she had her first child there. Yeah, so and we were living just probably 30 kilometers away from where they came to have their first child. Okay, so who would like to play along? Who's got some truths and lies that you would like to share about yourself? Come on, Wally, you got something?
oh yeah.
First one, I have 1 son. The second one, I'm Taiwanese. And the third one is I'm a million.
You a minion.
Million in my bank account.
You got $1 million in your bank. Oh, can I be your friend?
Which one is liar?
Beautiful. I think it's the last one. Yeah, you wouldn't be wiping bum pores if you had $1 million. Who else? Jessie? No? Ansi?
Okay. I never got a speeding ticket. I have no animals. I cannot drive a motorbike.
Hmm. I think you can drive a motorbike. I see you as that one of the, I think in your youth you were very naughty. So you would have had a speeding ticket as well. I think you do have animals. That's the lie.
Yes, you do like have a cat or dog, I think.
Yeah.
You want to hear the lie?
Yeah.
I cannot drive a motorbike. I have no animals. I've never gotten a speeding ticket. All truth.
Ah,
The
you
bike,
tricked
I
us.
can't drive a bike. Yeah, I can't drive a bike, but I
Kamu
have
kinukuha
no
ko dyan,
animals
You
and
tricked
I
us.
never got a speeding ticket.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, so just a little bit about myself. So
Yes.
I've been in care for 30 years. I did my training in 1987 in Cape Town in South Africa, and I've worked in the UK in care, and I've worked in Namibian care, I've worked in South African care. So I have got extensive time that I've spent in care. So anyway, I've worked in Australia at one of our local old age homes in Mackay for about 7 years, specifically in dementia. So I haven't got such a broad idea or haven't directly worked in a disability. My background is very strong in aged care. So through the course, that will obviously come through. A lot of my stories is from that, from that background that I've had in aged care. I do say though that elderly people that needs our help are elderly people with a disability. So in my opinion, there's not really a big deal or big difference between aged care and disability care. I think it is the same thing. You need the same but you need patience, you need kindness, you need to do personal care in a huge part of our jobs. So just on the sort of the background of that. On housekeeping, once we start back in the class, the emergency procedures, all those I'll go through, mobile and all that, smoke breaks, none of these really apply to us directly at this moment in this environment. Although I would like to, and even though this is recorded, I want us to always act with respect to each other. There is a lot of our jobs are very intimate, and sometimes there may be stories that or things that happen with you at work. I would like you to be very careful not to name the names of your clients in privacy. Confidentiality policies that you've also got at your companies where you're working, but it is part of our learning experience to share these type of stories with one another. So if you can disguise the stories a little bit and call Auntie Susie or something else, so that that somebody don't know who you're talking about if you're sharing a specific story. And I try to do that. I'm lucky that I have such a long period of time that I've been in care that I can disguise my stories that could really have happened anyway. So let's just try be keep the privacy of our clients when we share the stories. But at the same time, this is how we learn. And especially with this legal and ethically unit, it's all about things that can go wrong. And when we work with people in this type of industry, they're vulnerable people, and people do die. And I've had clients passed away in my care, and that's not nice. We can make mistakes. People make mistakes, and we need to, it's part of this unit is to highlight some of the pitfalls that there are in our industry, and how we can avoid that type of pitfalls. So in that we are discovering how to identify and respond to legal requirements, know how to identify and meet ethical responsibilities, learn how to contribute to workplace improvements, and gain skills and knowledge for this unit. So just a little bit of a heads up. Of course, the unit has got a huge amount of detail through it, the learner guides. So we have to just make sure that we do go and read our learner guides. Obviously can't, you know, in sort of cover the whole of the learner guide. I can only do part of it. So I'll just touch on sort of the inductions of the learner, through the learner guide, the main chapter headings, and then I'll fill it in with a little bit of just sort of points that I think is important. So and for that reason, I really urge you to actually go and read your learner guide. And this learner guide is specifically are really important to read through, because when you sign the TAR, the trainer assessor record, at the end of this, when you hand your assessment in, you really are signing that you've read and understood the whole of what is in the learner guide. And when there's ever a court case or anything coming in the future, and they go back and you say, well, I didn't know that this is wrong, or I didn't know that this could happen, they may just come back to you and say, well, it was part of your course, and you signed that you understood what was in your course. Now, just because I might have missed sharing that with you doesn't mean that you didn't acknowledge that you have read through the learner guide and understand the material. So on chapter 1 of this unit, we are identifying and responding to legal requirements. Chapter 1.1 is saying identifying and access and interpret sources of information about the legal requirements that applies to our work role. So the sources of information really comes from the background of that there's 2 types of law in Australia. This is the criminal law, where the police can charge you with something, you've broken the law, or the civil law. And in our scope of practice, or where we work with people, the civil law is really important. A lot of people, if they're not happy with the way you care for their grandma, or they're not happy with the way that you care for their child if you're in a disability, you can be sued. And this is a type of civil, where the civil law comes and you can be sued for damages for caring for that person. So these laws, like the civil law, solve problems and disputes between 2 or more parties, and the court and the legal personnel resolve these issues. So obviously the judge will then look at the case. If the client's family come and say, well, you were disrespectful or abusive or something like that, then sorry, I might just pause this. Is somebody just, all right. So yeah, so in this last one, the civil laws, they say, I don't know how true it is, that Queensland is right up there with America in civil suits, that people love suing each other in Queensland too. So we literally have to watch our back everywhere we go. So in the legal system in Australia, there is a High Court, and in the High Court, it's the highest court in the land. So in the High, that's where laws gets made. Then we have the Federal Court that deals with bankruptcy, corruption, and industry-related issues. We have the Family Court, and the Family Court, I think there's actually a Family Court now in Rockhampton. There used to only be up in Townsville, but I think we've got one closer. So the judge will come from Rockhampton or from Townsville if there's any family dispute or family issues with child custody or divorce and things like that. Family violence sometimes get dealt with in the, just in the normal state and territory courts. but these courts exercise federal authority as well. So within the Australian legal system, we have the federal government, the state government, both state and federal government. And so with these three aspects, when you do the Australian citizenship test, you get to know this really well. But I always say, if you want to know who's responsible for what, it's kind of like in the name. If we talk about the Australian dollar, that's obviously a federal, under the federal government. If we talk about Queensland Health, that's obviously under the state government. Yeah, just to understand, like Queensland Rail, so who's responsible for what? For something like in the legislation, we have equal opportunity legislation, the occupational health and safety legislation, industry code of practice, which is one of the things I emailed you last week. That was the Queensland Healthcare Workers Code of Practice. We will touch on today as well. Duty of care. So on these things, this comes under the different, you know, whether it's the equal opportunity legislation talks about the employment, race, marital, pregnant, age, disability, sex, stuff like that. And I covered that in the courts. The occupational health and safety is very important for us in the industry when we hurt ourselves. And tomorrow in our assessment, I will take to the website of WorkSafe Australia, as well as the Workers' Comp website, where you can, you know, if anything happens. And sadly, you know, we are probably in the industry where people get hurt more often than in any other industry, especially even though we've got lifting equipment, we still do a lot of manual handling and physically move people around. And I've been injured many times, and that does happen. So this is really important that we know a little bit about the occupational health and safety and the legislation and how we are protected in that. And then the industry code of practice, like I said, we have the Queensland Healthcare Workers Code of Queensland Healthcare Workers Code of Practice, which you know, I have emailed you guys. Oh, I haven't got a copy of you anymore. And in there, we have how we ought to behave in when we're caring for our clients. What is our real responsibility? If any of you haven't received that, just send me an email or message, and I will send that out again. Really, you can almost print that out if you can and laminate it and keep it as a guideline, because that will really help you in your work. It talks about things, medication, and we will talk about those in our assessment again tomorrow, because sadly today, because there's such a shortage of nurses, you know, we quite often get expected to do things that we haven't been trained for. And you're really putting yourself into a very vulnerable situation where you could get even a civil suit, but even break the actual, you know, criminal law if you do something that is not inside your scope of practice. Our scope of practice basically is what we are allowed to do, what we are trained for to do. And specifically when you work out, and this happens more often out in the community, with underneath the community employers, because they don't have CNs and RNs that can do medication, and then you're expected to do medication. And we'll talk a lot about that through the course. So, you know, I'll help you through that. Some other issues is harassment. Of course, racial harassment happens. We do understand we sometimes have to be like a duck and just shake it off, because we do work with some elderly people that can be very close to their views, and sometimes with dementia. they can be quite cruel and racist. You know, it's no use for us to you know, try to hold them accountable for that. It is a very, very hard thing, but we have to understand the generation we work with. But that is definitely not okay when your co-workers treat you with disrespect because you are, you know, from you're a foreigner, or you know, you're not Australian born or whatever reason, you know, your skin color is different. That is absolutely breaking the law, and you know, and we'll talk about, you know, how to deal with situations like that. Discrimination, unfair dismissal, and sadly, a lot of these things still happen, and people are discriminated against by the employers. And you know, I can't sit here and take the side of employers. Sometimes I do fear for my job because I talk out about these things. There are a lot of employers out there doing the wrong thing to the employees in a lot of ways. And this is nothing new. This has been happening for many years. When I was still working at myself, I was part of the union, and you know, and we're always fighting for fair work and fair employment conditions, you know, ratios. That's one of the biggest things in aged care. That is still a huge issue, and it's even worse now than what it was 2 years ago when I was still working in the old age home. That you know, you're social staff, and that's where accidents happen. That's where people get hurt, and where you can feel responsible for when an elderly person has had a bad fall and they maybe pass away because they've had a head injury, or you know, they've broken a hip, and because of the shock they you know, pass away. It's happened, you know, many times, and while I was working in care, that clients got hurt, and a week or two later they pass away because they got hurt. And quite often that happened when we were short staffed, when we were not able to be there for them. So, you know, there's a lot of wrongs, sadly, in the industry, and we, as in some ways, the guardian angels of our residents and our clients, sometimes really carry a huge burden to protect our clients and to protect our vulnerable adults that we are caring for. You know, when we're not able to give them the care that they deserve. So other rights and responsibilities that is attached to the legal platform in this unit is the aged care standards. And this is one of our units where we go into a lot more detail on the aged care standards. We have well, they describe it as the new aged care standards, but they already came out on the 1st of July 2019, so they're not that new anymore. There's been some amendments on there, specifically on the restraint policies on the HK standards. But basically, our HK standards is that the client is at the center of our care. It's the client's dignity and choice that sits in the center of our care. And whatever the client wants is what the client gets. I did my training in 1987 in Cape Town, South Africa, and I've been a nurse for many, many years. And in those days, 30 years ago, we used to tie our clients to chairs. We used to put a flat sheet around their body and tie them to the chair. Tell you what, we had no broken hips or, you know, falls and things, but it did take away their dignity. It took their, you know, they didn't have choice. And it had a huge impact on the elderly people. I remember the first time I walked into the aged care home here in Australia, I was so shocked because the old people were all so quiet. They were just sitting there like they had no joy. And a big part of that is this rigid way of doing things, of forcing them to do things against their will. And on top of it, of course, there's quite a lot of foreigners, and let's admit it, in our aged care homes, and our accents, they struggle to understand us. So most of them just become quiet because, you know, they can't understand us and they get treated terribly. So, you know, those are all the conditions that we see in all these things, and we take it to heart and we feel so sorry for them in those situations. But, you know, within the new aged care standards, we've got some ground to stand on to say to our employers and say to our co-workers that are rigid that, you know, you can't do that. It's her dignity and choice that is in the center of our care. And, you know, and stand up for their rights, because sadly, there are still a lot of, especially of the older nurses, that are still very rigid and still doing things that really take the client's choice away. Then we've got the disability standards. They're busy providing or revamping the disability standards at the moment, because the disability commission is still running. The HK commission came to, that was running for about 2 years. That is like an high court that was called to come and have a look into the care quality in Australia and into the old age homes. And, you know, like I said, when I got to Australia, I was shocked, because I came from the UK, and, you know, and while I was in the UK, the care standards in the UK in the aged care is very high, and the elderly are treated tremendously well. So when I got here, I was truly shocked. The way Australian elderly people are treated. And, you know, really a big part of it is that there's just not been enough funding from the government side into the aged care sector. And that's where it actually started. And, you know, and then of course, you know, none of us, if we really be honest with ourselves, would want to go to an old age home when we get old. You know, we wouldn't even want to put our parents in there. And then I'm not even talking about all these companies now popping up all over in disability care, and they're all registering themselves as disability companies around town, and all they're after is the money. They don't care about the residents' well-being. They just after the money. They don't care about you. They will tap the last drop of blood out of your body, and when they've had enough of you, they'll tell you there's the door. And that's sadly how it is. And I am not bound to you know, cover up anything. I know a lot of companies, and I can actually name names, that are in Mackay, operating in Mackay, doing the wrong thing. And it's not all of them, but there is a lot of them. And as we talk through these things, you guys are going to start saying, yeah, I do that. Oh, wow, that's happening where I'm working. And you'll see that the laws are actually in place to protect our residents and our clients against these things. But that's not always happening, sadly. So, yeah, so equal employment opportunities, freedom of information, and things like that is also part of this course. So in identifying our scope of practice in chapter 1.2 and the nature of our legal rights and responsibilities, you would go, and each company usually have like a thick file. It usually sits somewhere in the office on the shelf, and it's called policies and procedures. Each company has a unique set of policies and procedures, and those usually get updated by a CN, which is a clinical nurse. And the policies and procedures are the guidelines for everything that you need to do. It's got everyone's scope of practice in there. It's got things like evacuation procedures. It would have procedures on how do we deal with our dirty pads? Where do we go with our sharps? What do we do if there's a COVID outbreak inside our company? All of those policies and procedures are very, very detailed, or should be very detailed, in helping us to understand. So it is our responsibility to find those files. It's our responsibility to ask our co-workers, where is our policies and procedures for this company? And then when you have a moment, sit and page through it, and it's usually quite well organized. You know, when you go in the index, you find exactly what you are looking for and page through the policy and procedure and find, you know, what you may not be clear on how to deal with something. Sometimes it's hard because everyone's so busy to tell you exactly what you should do when you should do it. And then we are left in the dark on, you know, what do I do now? So the policies and procedures should have a little bit of guideline for us. Of course, if you don't know, you should ask. And really our role in aged care facilities, we are called AINs, which stands for Assistant in Nurses. So we really are standing right next to our clients, being the most responsible, most responsible for our clients. We also have a huge responsibility towards our registered nurses, the ENs, the enrolled nurses, as well as the RNs, the registered nurses, because we assistant to them. So that is our first scope of practice, is that we assistants. We are there to be their eyes and ears and then pass any issues on to them. If you're out in the community, it will be your supervisor, and quite often supervisors are ENs or RNs that have come out of the public sector or come out of old age homes and landed up being employed by companies in the field. But sadly, sometimes supervisors are just people that have done a Cert 3 or Cert 4 in business. They're actually not clinically inclined. So that makes it really, really hard to find the support you need when you have a clinical issue. Your client's got a temperature and you know, who do you call? Ghostbusters. So yeah, so our job description, read your job descriptions. Those come out usually when you apply for a job. And then we have talk to your management, talk to you know, your colleagues. Have I got anyone else that's come in?
I got lost.
Oh, you got lost. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
just,
I'm
I
sorry.
just write your names down. All good. I just keep tally of who's here. Okay, so standards of service, and then I do promote and do encourage all of my students to join the union. So if you go and Google the Red Union, RED, you just get to their website, and it only costs $20 a fortnight, so it's $10 a week. It will probably be the best $20 you've ever spent, because if you do have an issue in your work environment, you need a representative. You need somebody to stand with you. The Red Union are probably one of the best unions I've ever served. They are really there on the floor. They are really for us. They are very supportive. So yeah, please Google it and join the Red Union. It's very, very easy to join online. Because we do very personal things. We go in the bathroom with Nana, and it's just me and Nana in the bathroom. And if Nana has a BR bonnet and she wants to accuse me of sexually harassing her, she can do that. And what defense do I have? It's my word against her word. So when these things, and there are people like that out in the community, when these things happen, then you get fired. It gets put on your blue card. You never find a job again. And even though you become defenseless, you're like, I didn't do that. If you are part of the union, they can come in and say, oh, whoa, how many other care workers did this person do this to? They can ask for the records of that person's behavior. We can't go and barge in the office and say, well, how many times did she do that to somebody else? You know, we can't get all, and they're just going to say that is private information and that's got nothing to do with you. But if you do have the union on your side, they can help you to find that information and help that those type of issues gets resolved without a blemish on your name. But nevertheless, you guys need to always try and make sure that you have a second person with you if you ever have a difficult client like that. And they are there. There's plenty of them. So that you don't you know, put your foot in it or land up in a situation where you get accused of something. So that's where the union are very, very important, as well as, of course, with wage negotiations, with, you know, employment environment. So having the right equipment, having enough PPE in this day and age, you know, I mean, seriously, it's something we shouldn't even be discussing. But yeah, there are still companies that don't have enough gloves. They don't have enough aprons. They don't have enough masks. You get asked to work a whole shift with one mask. And you know, you with your hands in the client's room, touching, washing your hands and on and off with the mask, and the hands is in the face, and just now you're sick, and then what? You are the one that has to stay at home without pay because you're probably a casual, and you got sick at work. So, and because they don't have enough PPE, you should be taking those gloves and those masks and those aprons off and leave them in the client's room in a bin. You shouldn't walk out of the client's room with any PPE on you. You know, those things are considered contaminated on the outside. So what is the use of just having one mask? You're probably better off not even wearing a mask, and then you'll be more careful about touching your face. So, you know, these are things that are sadly still a reality. You go and you don't have enough wipes, you don't have enough stuff. And these are type of issues we can raise with the union to up those conditions so that we are safe and our clients are safe. Speak to your colleagues that've been there for a long time to tell you what is that. Workplace policies are well-written documents that are consistent with the value of the organization. They comply with employment and other associated legislation. These things are normally drawn up by lawyers and, you know, a lot of people. So they are, well, there's some that don't even have policy procedures, still fall through the cracks. So they ensure that there's a consistency in decision-making and operational procedures. So we're all doing the same thing. We're all doing it in the same way. And it adds strength to the position of the staff when there's legal issues arise. It just gives us a good guideline of what we're supposed to do. Chapter 1.3 talks about adhering to legal requirements in work practice according to workplace policies and procedures and our scope of role. So one of the main laws that come up or one of the main civil issues that come up is duty of care. We have a duty of care to support that, you know, that meets the duty of care requirements. This means that we must ensure that the clients receive adequate care in all departments. Now, this is a tall order, really, because we're so short-staffed, but it is part of our responsibility. This includes tasks that you have done yourself, tasks completed by your colleagues, sadly, and tasks completed by the client. It's a huge responsibility. If your co-workers, the previous shift didn't do their job, you don't know, you were not there. They could have had a fire drill, they could have had a big fall, something could have happened on the previous shift that they couldn't change the client's pad. And you come on duty and the client's lying there in a soiled pad that the poop is already drying on their skin and they got a massive skin burn or a nappy rash. And you go, you know, this is terrible, but that happens. Sadly, it becomes our responsibility then to clean up the client, and we can't call the previous shift back to come and clean your mess. We have to pick up the slack from them, and you know, and then our duty of care then towards that client to help that client to do our best to make them comfortable. You know, that's why it becomes all of our responsibility, or something like the bins wasn't taken out and the bins are sitting there in the laundry and they're filthy and they're smelly and the whole place stinks, and you know, and the previous shift didn't do it. We can walk around bitching and waiting for them to come back, or we can just go and do it. So you know, and that's why it becomes our responsibility as well to pick up the slack from our previous shifts or the team that was there before us. Duty of care comes under the ruling of the tort law. So it's in civil law really that that is supposed to breach to a breach of conduct. So it requires an individual to provide a standard of reasonable care while carrying out activity that could potentially harm other people. And you can see why this legally and ethically unit is so important, because we're constantly in the position where we accidentally can harm somebody else. You work with a client, elderly people's got very frail skin. Their skin is like paper. You can take a nightie off and give them a huge skin tear. You can sit them on the wheelchair, and then when you put the foot plate down to put their feet up, you hit them on the shin and give them a huge skin tear. When you rolling them over, you can roll them over too far and they can fall off the bed. You use the lifter, and you stand-up lifter, you lift them up with the stand-up lifter, and their legs give in and they just fall, or they go down and their feet is underneath the lifter. I've been in that situation, and the person's life is in danger, because if an elderly person has a huge fall, if they break a hip or they bump their head, they can die from that. I've had clients that have passed away after big falls, like I said before. So, these people can be potentially harmed through the care we give them. Not so long ago, I read about a young sport worker in Vandenberg that dropped the client out of his bed. And he then picked the client back up and put the client back into bed. And when the next shift came, they found the client bruised all over and had broken hips and broken ribs and all sorts. And the support worker that had done that didn't say anything. So that support worker was actually fined. He went to court and he was fined under the duty of care law. I don't know how much, but it was thousands. So the first day, when I worked at the Soldacham where I was working 7 years ago, there was a lady, her first day, she was a young Filipino lady, and she came in and she was an RN in the Philippines. And the first day, buddy shift, she was told to just get on with it because we're short staffed, and she was expected to just care for the clients. She went into a client's room and he had a rollator in the room. So there's one of these almost wheelie walkers, but they're higher. So you put your arms on it and it holds your body up as well. And there was a rollator in this client's room. And she thought that he could stand up. She didn't read his care plan. She didn't know. She was thrown in the deep side. It wasn't her fault. And when she helped the client up and he got onto the rollator, he went down like a big sack of potatoes, and he had skin tears on his arms, and there was just blood everywhere. She's still there, and it wasn't her fault. She's an amazing nurse. She's an absolute amazing nurse. She was so traumatized by the whole event. But these things happen and we feel responsible. So sometimes somebody can fall, and quite often we are so shocked when that happens that, we don't know what to do. And it's, the main thing is that we do need to take responsibility. It's better to report and say, this happened, I'm so sorry. You are better off in that situation.
Classic. Dali. Asa man ka Madonna? Ate ra gawali ay.
Sorry, I got you muted.
Sorry.
That's all right. It was still on. Okay. I thought you might wanted to share something. That's all right. Anyway, so that's where our duty of care is really, really important, because these things can happen. And breaching of duty of care means that you as an individual are liable for legal action from the client, or from the claimant. So bear that in mind when you're caring for somebody. And of course, don't be scared when something happens. It's happened to me. We had a lady, she was very stiff. And she had a huge bed sore, and we used to have to roll her every 2 hours and change her. And the one day I rolled her towards me, and when I was holding her, she hit her eye on the bedside, and she had a skin tear on her eye. And obviously that would have been like a bit like a you know, a head injury as well. So when that happened, I was mortified, you know. Hi, Fran.
Hi.
I'll just put your name on. We got going already, so
Yeah, that's okay.
oh, good. Okay.
I've actually finished this subject.
Okay, no worries. I might just mute you if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so just bear that in mind, our duty of carers, and we can be charged. We can, you know, but I reported straight away when that happened, and I said, look, I'm sorry this happened. It wasn't, you know, intentional, and nothing. I wasn't reprimanded or anything by that. And sometimes you must remember, if you give somebody skin tear, if you don't report it, there's blood there that dries. It doesn't heal nicely. The sooner the nurse, the RN, can come and put the skin back in place and put steroid strips on there, the healing chance is much better. If you leave it open, the infection can set in. And I can sometimes pinpoint by saying, oh, this must have happened on the previous shift. Who was the last people who worked with this person? And then you are in trouble. But if you report it straight away, you know, it happens. It does happen, and nobody will be angry with you. You just have to, you know, just report it. It's really, that's your duty of care towards that client, to make sure that it doesn't become, you know, worse, or it's not a worse situation than what it is when it's just happened. Because, like I say, infection could set in, and that obviously can be much worse than just, you know, keeping the wound clean. So in chapter 1.4, we talk about recognized potential or actual breaches and reporting to, or according to organization policies and procedures. There's the privacy is applicable to many aspects of the client's care. So we trying to train everyone about privacy and how important that is. Restrictions to and access to records. If you guys got your clients, especially out in the community, if you've got your clients' things on your phone, you got your login to your company's portal and stuff, please make sure that you've got a double lock on your phones, that if you do lose your phone, that somebody else can't get into your company's, into your client's notes. If you have paper records and stuff like that, driving around with those in your car. In Early Beach, about 3 years ago, I was working for Ideal Placements. There was an incident, it was all over the news. Working with two vulnerable adults, two adults that were both autistic, and the male and the female, they were in a relationship, and the male was abusive. So there was, you know, procedures put in place. They were separated, and originally the care worker was caring for the couple, and then after the male was removed from the relationship, or removed from the situation, the male followed the care worker around to find out where his ex-girlfriend was, and she stopped somewhere, and when she got out of the car, the paperwork for the female was on the front seat, and he accessed the paperwork, found out where she was, and actually went to kidnap her and locked her in the boot of his car. It was a huge thing, because, you know, and ultimately it was the care worker's responsibility to keep that information secure. So we need to be very careful. These type of things do happen. Respecting clients' personal relationships. This is a huge part of, especially when you work in dementia, you know, respecting people and their choices, whatever choices they may make. And we will talk a lot more about that subject in one of our other units. Confidentiality, of course, when we work with our clients and look in our industry, some really crazy stuff happens to us. And sometimes when you meet a colleague outside and you start talking about this crazy old boy that you're looking after, and he's such a menace, and he presses the buzzer all the time, and he does this and he does that. And then you'll end up talking about him in a public space, and you don't know who's listening. It's happened as well, where care workers have been overheard by families, friends or something, and they recognize that they were talking about a client, and you can lose your job. So confidentiality is required by law and certain aspects in the privacy of the patients and clients' records, and as of course being confidential. And that's a breach, really. Discussing your client outside of work, leaking sensitive documents to third parties, or ignoring your duty of care. Those are all part of breaches within our industry. Okay, so on chapter 2, we're identifying and meet ethical responsibilities, identify and access, interpret sources of information about ethical responsibilities that apply to our job role. So code of ethics is a professional code that details expectations of our behavior of the workers in the workplace and of the profession. Really, code of ethics, like the doctor would make a declaration when he finishes his training that I shall do no harm, and and they swear to a code of ethics, or a lawyer that whatever private information the client shares with them. So this is sort of under professional registered personnel. This is like an actual document. For us as aged care workers, disability workers, or AINs for that, we don't really have, we don't swear to it or make an oath to it, but we do still fall under that code of ethics of the Queensland Healthcare Workers, and we will go through a little bit of the details in just 1 minute. So identifying your scope and your nature of your ethical responsibilities, and deciding, so personal ethical dilemmas may be deciding whether to accept a gift from a grateful client, or request outside of work hours. Oh, do you want to come for dinner on Sunday? My son will be here, and the old lady is trying to set you up with a son, or, or they just, trying to be friendly to you and want you to just come and visit or something when you are not working. Sometimes other ethical dilemmas might be that that the client is actually breaking the law, they're stealing money from Centrelink or somewhere. And then the aged care home, sometimes the clients come and say, have you got a smoke for me? And they try to bum a smoke off you, and smoke inside the building because they're not allowed to, poor darlings. Or sometimes when our co-workers are inappropriate, they may, I worked with a lady once, she was stealing black bags. She said to me when she took the roll of black off, by accident probably saw her, and she said to me, oh yeah, I never buy black bags. I always like, really? I will buy you a bag of black bags next time I go shopping. Is your job really worth a roll of black bags? $3, whatever, how much it's for a bag of black bags. So, landing up in that situation where your co-workers are exploiting the company's resources. So those are things we also, sadly, have to watch out for. So meet ethical responsibilities, chapter 2.3, according to workplace policies and procedures, and scope of role, which will talk about that. Seek regular support from your supervisor and bring any situation to the attention of your team leader. Seek advice from your work colleagues. Look to professional guidelines for your scope of practice. Go and Google it. Check out what our responsibilities are, and seek to have your position description clarified, especially when you are in the community. Ask your CN, your RN, your supervisor, could you please email me the policies and procedures so I can study this while at home, so I can see exactly what is expected from me, because they sometimes break their own policies and procedures because it suits them, and they think because you don't know that they can get away with it. So please cover yourself. So with the Queensland National Code of Conduct for Healthcare Workers in Queensland, that I've emailed to you guys. Sorry, I'm just going to go back there. So there's a few things on the healthcare workers code of conduct that is important. And if you do have a copy of it, you can follow me through this a little bit. So on the first chapter, I might just go back there. The first, I just have some notes on the side here that I missed. So a healthcare worker must provide health services that in a safe and ethical manner. Healthcare worker without limit, subclause 1 must comply with the following. A healthcare worker must maintain the necessary competencies in his or her field of practice. So that the first point in this code of conduct is that if you do not have the certificate, the necessary competency to do something, you're not allowed to do that. This is really, really important. And it goes on to H. I'm just going to highlight H. It says a healthcare worker must have a sound understanding of any possible adverse interactions between therapies and treatments provided or prescribed, or any other medication or treatments, whether prescribed or not, that he or she should be aware of that the client is taking or receiving, and advise the client of these interactions. So this is a real point of a sensitive point, especially when you work out in the community, because you are expected to give medication. We are allowed to assist in self-medication, but even then, when you are giving medication, if you break that medication out of the Webster pack into a little container for your client, and your client has to take that themselves. You can't put that in their mouth. That is self-medication for one. Number two, H in interpretation says that when your client are taking that medication, but that is in that little box, that little container, you need to know what is in there, and you need to know if there's any of that medication that may have an adverse reaction that may cause your client to be allergic to, that may interact with a different medication. So realistically, you need to go and Google the medication that is in the Webster pack, check what the side effects might be, so that if there's an adverse indication, if the client has a reaction to the medication and you call 000, that you can tell the paramedics when they arrive, my client took this medication and it may be a reaction to the medication, so they can treat the client sooner than later. So that's really important for self-medication, as well as when you do self-medication. Number A, which I read first up, said that a healthcare worker must maintain the necessary competencies in his or her field. So you must have a type of certificate or a type of attendance of a self-medication workshop. If your company expects you to give self-medication, please, there's a lady called Elsa. She works at her company is called FACT. She does self-medication workshops. It costs, I don't know, I forget, $60, I think. It's a 2-hour workshop, just to help us to really know what is the important things we have to watch out for when we're doing self-medication. You can get that, you can claim that back on your tax if you go and do that course, but usually your company should pay for it, really. If they expect you to go and do self-medication, they should send you for a course. Some companies have their own little courses inside the company. Just do those and just be really, sort of vigilant about what you're learning in those courses. It's really important that you know that. Another one is that we must obtain consent. We must always get our clients to agree with the care. We must also report any concerns. That's number 4. if there's any concerns of our clients, our responsibility, our ethical responsibility to report that. If there's any adverse reactions or adverse events, if a client's had a massive fall or something has happened, we also have the responsibility to call for help and respond to that in an appropriate manner. So we need to familiarize ourselves. What do I do if I walk into the house and the client's lying on the floor and there's blood everywhere? And she says, oh, just get me up, because she knows that if her daughter finds out she's lying on the floor, she's had another fall, they're going to put her in an old age home. So she's quickly get me up. What is our responsibility? How do we react? What do we do? So we have to talk about these things. We have to find out from our company, our managers, what do they want us to do? Who do we call? Where do we go? Sometimes, sadly, when you work out in the community, if you call the supervisor, they may not be reachable. What do you do? So one of the things I always tell clients, 1300 health, 13 health, 13 health. I don't know what that says. I think it's one, I don't know, anyway. 13 health is a number you can call. I don't know what the number is now. I'll put it up sometime. Or 000. Of course, with adverse events, we always call 000 straight away. We don't hesitate. Then we call the supervisor afterwards. So protect the rights of your clients. It's also our ethical responsibility to protect their rights and familiarize yourself with anti-discrimination law, Age Discrimination Act 2004. Recognize potential ethical issues and dilemmas and report to the appropriate person. These may be conflict of interest, using your work time to sort out your personal manners, taking credit for somebody else's work, harassing colleagues or clients, any ethical issues, you don't know, is that right? Can anyone do that? Talk to your supervisor. Bullying, that's a big thing as well. Sadly, still in our work industry, and I think Mackay, I have seen quite a bit of, it's quite bad or quite rough here. I don't know if it's indirectly got to do with some of the mining attitudes, because some of the men get really badly treated out on the mines, and I think some of those things sort of washes over into the town's attitude, and people are being bullied, and they, that's seriously so, out of date. That's so lame, really. But talk to somebody about that. If you are getting bullied, talk to somebody. And if you don't get help, call the Red Union, talk to a representative at the Red Union, and they'll give you advice on that. Personal relationships with the clients. I mean, you think, oh, seriously, but yeah, that does happen. Confidentiality of a malpractice, saying somebody who you are not, and consent with the clients. Recognize your own personal values and attitudes and take into account non-judgmental practice. Values are principles and standards and qualities that an individual or group of people hold in high regard. So this may be guides. This may be a guide in the way we live our lives and make. Some, people may have different values to other people. It doesn't mean that they necessarily higher values or lesser higher values. It's just the way we grew up. For example, and I love the Filipino people. I think they're the most amazing social and kind and loving and family orientated people, and their values in caring for their loved ones. Like in the Philippines, for example, I've learned that there's no AINs, there's no care workers in the Philippines. So if you go into the hospital in the Philippines, your family comes and give you a bath. They're the ones that come and feed you. So in this home where I was working, there was one man, an Australian man that was married to a Filipino wife. And she used to come in wanting to bath her husband. And, us as care workers, we have this thing like, oh, you just want to see whether we're doing a good job or something, We don't want you in the room, and we send her out. And, it took us, it took a bit of sort of recognizing and learning about the culture, and to say to people and say to each other, look, let's let her, let's make her part of the team to help us. Of course, we can do with the help. We're short staff all the time. She's there because that is part of her value system. That is what she does. That old boy had so many wipes. He had everything he needed all the time. She just cared for him so well. And that is their values as where they come from, and that's what they do for one another. Where we may not even think about that. We think, no, like in the Western cultures, we think, oh, they're getting their pension, they've got their own money, they can care for themselves. And sadly, quite a bit of the elderly people don't have shampoo, they don't have clothes, they don't have slippers, they don't, they hardly got anything because their pension's just not enough. That whatever the government gives them is just not enough. And because we have our own issues, our own children's issues, we just, we don't even consider, it's just not part of our makeup to even consider that mum may not be cared for adequately, and then when we find it out, we're sometimes shocked because we thought that it was cared for. So that value is sort of not necessarily a lesser value, or that we're not community orientated. I just think the Western culture has been so we've been so disconnected as families. We've been so driven apart. And now with the mask thing, we don't even smile at each other when we go into the shops. We don't even greet each other. We're all just going in there with our mission. Oh, don't talk to me. Don't look at me. That we're even getting more disconnected as people. That is really, really sad. And, and at the end of the day, the people that suffers the most under these conditions are the vulnerable people we care for. So, these things are, what is really important. My children is really important to me. And I tell you what, I will kill. If somebody comes for my children or hurt my children, I'm a hippo mom. I'll sit on them. So, that's the qualities that we value high. You get somebody else that maybe their values may be in, education, or their values may be in somewhere else. It doesn't make it necessarily wrong or right. And we just have to learn to be, kind to one another in all ways, and understand that our values are different. The way we grew up, really. So use effective problem-solving techniques when exposing or competing to value systems. Competing value systems in the environment we work may be faced with ethical dilemmas, or be torn between the needs and the desires of your clients and your own personal beliefs or values. Sometimes you may go in and you say, like you guys as Filipinos, you go in and you think, this is just wrong. Why doesn't she have what she needs? And you're like so torn, constantly so battled, because these people are so little cared for. There's so little care and love towards them, and that's a real thing. It's then when there's a conflict of values, you are faced with a decision over which is the most important. Remember, the client's health and safety should always be your number one concern. So report these things. But number two, you cannot go and buy stuff for your clients out of your own pocket. Okay, I know a lot of people are doing that. Don't do that. Just call the family. Sometimes the family are just not even aware that their family hasn't got enough. Just call, just report. Don't take it on yourself, because at the end of the day, your family also depends on you. So, we're already not really getting paid enough. So, don't take that on yourself. I know stall orders, look, I know I've done it, and I've got many friends that still do it, that take things. But actually, if you do get caught, that you take stuff for the clients, you may get into big trouble. And is that really worth your job? Because at the end of the day, it's one of those company policies and procedures that are in place for certain reasons, because sometimes people can use that by buying stuff for their clients to kind of soften their clients up, or what's the right word? You know, try, okay, well, I've done so much for you. Can you put me in your will? I could do with inherit something from you because I looked after you. So it's to protect clients against that we're not allowed to take them things. So please be aware, because that you can actually lose your job over that. Identify and meet ethical responsibilities, recognize unethical conduct and report that to the appropriate person. Gossiping about the clients in a social situation, somebody that speaks in a discriminating way towards others or towards the client. Sometimes you get, again, some of these old nurses that becomes over familiar with their clients, and they like can be a bit crude and a bit like you know, oh, come on, you lazy old bum, let's get up and, you know, and talk to the client like that, because they've, you know, looked after the client for 14 years and they've got their own little dynamic there. That may be fair and fine for you, but when somebody else comes in from the outside, they don't understand your relationship with your client, and that is actually very unprofessional. You know, arguing in front of the client, fighting with somebody in front of the client, these situations of behaving, this is really about a professional ethics and behaving in a professional way. So recognize potential or actual conflicts of interest and take appropriate action. So these may be sometimes benefiting yourself, taking advantage of a client, this ability to perform your job or your professional standard or conflict of interest. This can lead to doubt over your ability to perform your job effectively. Manage this conflict of interest in the best way you can by avoiding it and having clear policies and procedures in your workplace, or understanding the policies and procedures in our workplace. So the HK standards I was mentioning in the beginning is, you know, there's the 8 HK standards. In here in chapter 3, we talk about identifying situations where workplace could be improved or to meet the legal and ethical responsibilities. Within this 8 standards, the first standard being customer dignity and choice, second standard, ongoing assessment and planning with your customers, personal care and clinical care, standard 3, standard 4, service and support for daily living, standard 5, organization service environment, standard 6, feedback and complaints, standard 7, human resources, standard 8, organizational governance. Like I said, I actually have a whole unit or whole presentation a bit further down the line where we are going to cover all of these standards in a lot more detail. But the one thing I just want to highlight as an introduction is the HK standards are a bit like a wheel. It's designed like a wheel. So it's got the dignity and choice in the center of care. So all the other standards are connected to this dignity and choice. So companies are getting audited by the government. If you fail 2 standards, you fail the standards. Then they give notice, and then you have to fix whatever's wrong. So you can actually lose the company can actually lose their registration if they fail 2 standards. And the point I want to make is that it's not hard to fail 2 standards. If you fail any of the standards around. So, for example, if the client's bathroom is not accessible in the like in the old age home, the bathroom hasn't got a rail on, or there's a broken rail in the bathroom, or the drain is not working properly, or the toilet is too low and they can't get themselves up and down on the toilet. and there's a audit, and they come in and they see this customer complains and says, well, my toilet is really not, I can't use my toilet, or my bathroom is very difficult to use. Then the company fails that service environment, or they fail that standard for, which one would it fall under? Organization service environment, I think. And if they fail one standard, they automatically fail the customer dignity and choice as well. So also another example might be the food. Some of these old age homes, the food, people are always complaining about the food. So the food is not tasty enough, or we're not serving, it's not warm enough, or something is wrong with the food. So if the auditors come in and the clients complain about that, then we fail too again, because it's holding on to customer dignity and choice. So that's why it's important to understand the whole structure there, that we always fail to. And that means that a company then can lose their registration. Now they always get notice from the government that this has to be fixed, and they got a certain time to fix it. This is also important to know when you are working out in the community and there's broken things, or there's some other system that's not working properly, to make your supervisors know that, we are not meeting our clients' dignity and choice in this matter, and we can fail the standards. So in sharing feedback, that is about, one of the greatest resources and progressing is our experience. And when you have dealt with an ethical issue, share your experience and your lessons learned with your colleagues and supervisors. When I worked in the UK, I looked after an old lady. She was 100 years old. Needless to say, she was a spinster. That means she never got married. Maybe that's the key of growing old. But when I told her, are we moving to Australia? She was so excited. Like, she's, I went to Australia in 65 on a boat, and I took this bus from Brisbane to Cairns, and I met all these people along the way. And she had a little telephone book with everyone's names and phone numbers in. And she said to me, I must go visit all these people when I get to Australia. And I said to my darling, you are 100 years old, never mind. I don't think these people might not still be there still. But anyways, she gave me a bangle that was made, an Aborigine bangle that she bought, or somebody gave her when she was in Australia. And she really wanted me to bring the bangle back to Australia. And it was not an expensive one. It was more like an art thing. But, because of companies' policies and procedures, and because of this receiving gifts thing, I know we can't receive gifts from our clients. So I had to give that. I took the bangle and I gave it to my RN, and I told him, and he locked it in the safe. So I told him that she gave it to me. Now that has stayed with me. I've been in Australia now for 9 years, and this happened about 10 years ago, but it still stayed with me. And it was still one of the most precious things that anyone has done for me in care, because she was so excited, and she was so, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't say to your clients, no, I can't receive this from you. Don't steal their joy, because they're excited to give you something special. But be aware that it may be a family heirloom or something like that. Rather take that. If Nana tries to give you her rings and say, oh, you're such a good girl, you look after me so well, I want you to have this ring. Take it from her, say thank you very much, and go and write it in her care plans, and go and lock it away somewhere. Let somebody know, let her family know that she tried to give you this. You have locked it away safely, because if she tries to give it to you, she's probably going to try give it to somebody else. and they may not be as honest as what you are. And then when the family comes around, and then Nana says, oh yeah, I gave it to Auntie. And then, no, she tried to give it to me. I said no, and then you get into trouble and you didn't even take it. So just take it and take it to your supervisor. And in an older home, it's easier. You take it to your RN, let the RN lock it away in their drug cupboard or wherever, and let them then notify the family about it. And maybe you put it even in their notes that they've given you a gift. Because yeah, like I say, you know, the family may come afterwards. I had one of my students, she worked with a lady as well, and she used to say this lady used to keep cash in her house all the time. She used to have this hordes of cash in a drawer. She used to even phone the family all the time and say, I want some more cash, I want some more cash. She was probably quite well off. And you know, and she had to notify the family. She had to phone the family and say to them, you know, you keep bringing your mom $500, but she's actually not spending that. It's all sitting in her room, it's in her drawer. And you might just get a next person come in and take that. And look, I've seen through the time that I've been in care many times, dishonest people taking advantage of care of the elderly specifically in this way. So it's really important that we write down whatever you notice. You always share these things with, you know, in your client's notes. So, you know, just be completely open and always just share things. So I'm really, like, to be honest with you, at the end of my presentation, I wanted to just put it out to you. If you've got any questions of any legal issues that you may have come across already. Ansi was mentioning earlier buying something for somebody that she's already come across, that, you know, somebody's don't have enough stuff. The most important thing is to actually just always write everything down. There's different types of formats of documentation, and we will do communication next week where we will talk about the different types of documentation that we have in age and community care, and the different descriptions. Most companies call the client notes progress notes. And some companies, some of the old age homes, we as AINs are not allowed to write in the progress notes, but there are ways you can actually make a recording somewhere and say maybe in the in one of the other care notes, and then tag it in to be a progress note. In the community, they might call it a client note or a care note or something like that. Just always write everything down. Yeah, and please go and Google Red Union. I will actually send you, I can Google it and send you a link. I will do that. And I'll send you the new schedule also. Any other questions? No?
None so far.
All good? It goes so much quicker online. When we're in class, we all talk a lot, and then we get through the work much quicker online, it seems like it.
Yes, I